Patterns of the Unplanned is a journey resulting out of unplanned situations encountered in the urban fabric. Patterns of the Unplanned has the contradiction in its meaning. Patterns can be seen in regularly repeated arrangements. They are built up in a mental construct. They lean on something that we have already encountered. They are predictable and often guide us to the continuation of something more. Unplanned, on the other hand, gives a feeling of insecurity due to unpredictability, contrary to the predictable notion of patterns. The unplanned contains surprises and unpredictable variations unfolding in treasures or disasters. Patterns of the Unplanned focuses on the uncanny ways of things coming together in this unruly urban fabric. Physical elements observed in this context all exist with intensity, no monotony, with or without delicacy. Each of the forms has its own particular pace, which present the uniqueness of the things. The word uncanny articulates multiple elements coming together in an extraordinary manner, resulting in spatial compositions that are intriguing and difficult to untangle. Changes in perception, appearance, consistency of the surface or substance. Interruptions in a linear continuity. The elements that change their direction responding to the surrounding elements. Differentiation within a color palette. The recent sign of specialization, divergence, or old and new. Two different elements sharing the same intersection without losing their properties. The elements that interact with each other or just exist together. The thickness of the facade, carvings, paintings, the traces that people leave behind. What are the things that suddenly appear? How do the things get there? What is the situational context? What is on the ground? What are the invisible actors? What is the role of time? Rather than answering these questions rationally, Patterns of the Unplanned reveals the spatial potentials given by the physical conditions and then undergoes a change in meaning with new interpretations made on these compositions. Beyond the negativity of descriptive words such as disorders, imperfections, or flaws, Patterns of the Unplanned seeks those descriptive words and use their power to reveal the transition from matter-of-fact existence to something poetic. Patterns of the Unplanned are investigated by paper models. The models shows a three-dimensional transformation of a two-dimensional photograph. As compositions move from 2D to 3D, design decisions such as defining the proportions, the scale, the depth are already made. The main purpose of the medium is to show the transition of physical elements that are perceived as imperfection in its sharpest form. The realistic context models transform to new models which represent spatial configurations in the further stages. The purpose of the paper models is to talk about the spatial performativity and its emotional value by manipulating, exaggerating imperfection by reflecting interpretations. Lastly, the models act as a composed images. In order to test out the spatial configurations and its performativity, 3 facade thicknesses have been chosen in order to extract and investigate the patterns of the Unplanned. The figurative representation of the extracted elements allows them to lose their identity and present the start of an autonomous object. With this process, the object changes its standing as one thing to become something else. The semantic field of opposition of the German words heimlich and unheimlich is all behind the formation of the paper models. To mention the word heimlich first, it conveys the known and the familiar. Alternatively, the other meaning of the word is which is concealed or secret. To further complicate matters, unheimlich conveys which is unknown and unfamiliar. but the other meaning of the word is which is unhidden or unconcealed. The paper models points to the disorders that we see in the terrain. These compositions, which are part of a context that we are now intimate with, treats us with mutual familiarity. But their extraordinary nature conceals obscurity. This composition seems to contain secrets inside, the unknown. The obscured facade thickness gives weight to revelation of the secrets behind these disorders. Unheimlich, which is the uncanny, is an argument in which two opposite interpretations overlap. Doubling creates an identity, which unites two opposing properties within itself. The interest in the design process generated comes from the tension that exists between the factually known information and the speculative nature of what it can become. A coffer with particular scale, an urban furniture it contains. The coffer has a repetitious structural framework, offset step by step from the middle to the outside, and sometimes rise and fall. Each different from the other, but at the same time the resemblance is undeniable, showing a hidden layer of modularity. Two rims, sitting on the edges holding the frameworks together, and leaving them in the background, are holding onto the coffer. They are on the same plane, but their stance is opposite. One wants to see the sun as the other sets down, in between a zone of passage. Coffer carries out more and more, first with a strip, thickening gradually outward. It disrupted in the middle by patches to reveal beneath. Rim meets patches like stretchy arms, both transform into latches. A coffer has no need for another framework, but only something to hold. A slow entry led itself to a link to two, perhaps very different spaces. A transition or a pause. What are we leaving? What we are coming to? These two questions go hand in hand, as if it is expecting a single or infinite answer. A shadow reflects on the ground, as if it were the familiar shadow of an estranged person. Coffer gets his answer while being grounded. A corner piece is located at the intersection of two irrational walls between inside and outside. Its implication cannot appear in the absence of these two walls. The walls blurring the border by their impossible to define edges. In consequence of the edges, they consist of many surfaces, flat and smooth surfaces. They don't have mercy for each other. However, they are coexisting together. A kind of symbiotic relationship exists. The spatial relations formed would fail without one another. Corner piece has its standing in between interior and exterior. It takes its strength from everything that surrounds it. Inside of the walls, there is an interior with purposeful emptiness, which emphasizes the piece lurking in the corner. Every element that makes up the interior gains its recognizability from outside, but with one difference. They start to adapt each other to enclose the interior. The floor gets heavy and the walls return their face to the corner. The inclination of the floor and the walls provides not a single moment to experience, but many in movement. Muted has the urge to be expressed by itself, to be seen and to hide. It deals with two opposite approaches. If the eye cannot enter, how is the presence of the inside felt outside? If the eye cannot exit, how is the presence of the outside felt inside? Muted unites these two approaches within itself.